Dennis took a deep breath, held it for a moment, and exhaled sharply. He looked sympathetically into the boy's eyes and hoarsely asked, "How did he die? Long ago?" "I don't know," the boy replied in a constrained voice and tried again to shut the door in front of the stranger. But Dennis continued to hold it with his foot. He remembered Anna's ring and her declaration of love and asked the next question, "And where is this one, the other one?" "I don't know," the boy repeated grumpily, glancing disapprovingly at the guest's white sneaker. And where is Mom?" Dennis asked. "Mom is at work." The boy's face brightened. He waved his hand in a direction, hoping that the strange man would leave after that, and said, "Over there, at the daycare center." Dennis hesitated slightly, turned around to mentally picture which specific institution was being referred to. His foot slipped out of the doorway, and in the same second, the agile boy slammed the door shut. Dennis smirked and hurried out of the entrance to figure out where to go next. There were many daycare centers in their area, but he trusted the boy's words and walked in the direction he pointed with confidence. Dennis turned the corner of the building and saw a green fence in the distance. Behind it, a group of people were milling about. Among them, holding a paint roller in her hand, stood Anna. Dennis approached closer, leaned on the fence with his elbows, and stretched a dreamy smile, observing her every move. Anna had a very serious expression on her face. She gave instructions, then approached the sunburnt wall of the porch and dipped the roller in paint. Feeling intense scrutiny, Anna turned abruptly and assumed a businesslike posture, meeting Dennis's mocking gaze. He waved his hand and headed off in search of the gate. "Do you need any help?" Dennis asked as he approached the property. "Yes, please," an unfamiliar woman answered. She looked at Dennis with suspicion and asked, "And who's the father?" "I'm no one's father, at least not yet," he grinned, looking directly at Anna. She energetically continued working with the roller, ignoring Dennis's approach. She gasped in surprise when he skillfully took the tool out of her hands. "And how, I wonder, did you find me?" Anna asked, enjoying the opportunity to relax. Dennis eagerly took on the task. He waited for the right moment, testing her patience, then turned around and confidently answered, "Your husband told me." "What husband?" Anna's voice trembled in surprise. Dennis immediately put the roller aside and approached her, watching her reaction. "Your husband, the one you love. Which number is he? The second?" "The second?" Anna exclaimed in outrage. She quickly composed herself and looked around. Their conversation could easily be overheard. Dennis grabbed her hand and pulled her onto the veranda, seeking refuge from prying eyes. He pressed her against the unpainted wall and passionately confessed, "Anya, I love you so much. Still, I don't care how many husbands there were, as long as I'm the last one for you." "I didn't have any husbands," Anya snapped, burning Dennis with a piercing gaze from her blue eyes. "The ring was passed down from my grandmother. I wear it to keep away people like you, pushy and disrespectful, those who want to have it both ways." "What both ways?" Dennis smiled, tenderly looking into Anya's hurt face. "I don't need anyone but you." "And what about your fiancé? It seems like you were engaged just yesterday." "I don't have a fiancé anymore, but if you agree, then there will be." Dennis nervously caught his breath and resolutely added, "Marry me." He held her shoulders tightly, keeping Anya on her feet. She looked at him skeptically and shook her head slightly. "I can't." Dennis's heart soared and then plummeted. "All right," he reluctantly agreed, gathering the remnants of his confidence. "I know you don't have strong feelings for me, but I will do everything in my power to never disappoint you." "It's not about that, Dennis," Anya interrupted him, blinking rapidly as tears welled up. "It's much more serious. I don't know how to confess this to you." "Why, Anya?" "I'm ashamed," Anna whispered, trembling like a poplar leaf. "Anna Mikhailovna," a woman's voice sounded nearby. Dennis managed to step away from her, and Anya quickly wiped away her tears. One of the mothers caught them on the veranda and awkwardly said, "We're done here. Only the veranda is left." Anya nodded and followed her, putting on a carefree smile. Dennis grabbed the roller again, replaying her last words in his head. As soon as Anya was close by, he leaned towards her slightly and murmured, "I'll come at 7 tonight, and you'll tell me everything, all right?" Anya's gaze dulled. She nervously licked her lips and nodded. "All right." Dennis felt inspired and sent her a devoted smile. He didn't know how he would make it until 7. He didn't know how he would occupy himself until the evening, but he had no doubt that he would solve all of Anya's problems and take her with him. When Dennis returned home, he was in high spirits. He peeked into the kitchen and smiled at his mother. "Mama, what's for lunch?" She was sitting alone at the table, but upon seeing her son, she jumped up and hurried to the stove. It had been a while since he called her Mama, ever since he became a heartless robot, disillusioned in love. Elena Viktorovna placed a plate in front of him, sat down across from him, and cautiously asked, "So, How did your conversation with Anya's husband go? She doesn't have a husband. She never did. She lied to me back then about going back to her ex, but I can't understand why. Don't dwell on the past. His mother waved her hand. What's done is done. Dennis squinted, examining his mother's face, which stretched into a fake smile. He knew her all too well. Mom, do you have something to tell me? You're being too kind today, asking about Anya. Have you finally accepted it? What else can I do? You told me to stay out of it, and I don't want to lose my son because of another woman. It's a pity you didn't understand that earlier. Yes, it's a pity. Elena Viktorovna sighed and deeply contemplated, feeling tormenting guilt. Dennis spent the day wandering around the city. He couldn't resist and bought a ring for Anya, estimating the size of her finger. He bought a bunch of roses, a game console for the little boy, and he parked near her entrance 30 minutes before the appointed time. Disregarding punctuality, Dennis hurried to enter the house to see Anya as soon as possible. She opened the door, saw the huge bouquet, and was astonished. "Denny, you're crazy. Is it really not possible?" she exclaimed in surprise, stepping back and allowing him to come in. Dennis smiled, leaned towards her lips, but seeing the curious little boy peeping from behind the corner, he restrained his wild impulse and called Anya's son to him. "Hello." He handed him a gift, then manfully opened his palm. "Come on, let's get acquainted. Denis Andreevich." "Leshka," the boy modestly responded. "Well, how can you be Leshka? Here I am, Denis Andreevich. And you?" "And I am..." Leshka glanced at his mother, then confidently shook the guest's hand and introduced himself. "Alexei Denisovich." Anya almost dropped the flowers from her hands. She stepped back and bumped into the wall. Dennis watched her son warily, then turned his gaze to her. And suddenly Anya weakly smiled and started speaking with a slurred voice. "The doctor who delivered my baby, his name was Dennis, and that's why I decided this way." She fell silent when Dennis stepped closer. He furrowed his eyebrows and asked quietly, "Anya, were you waiting for me?"